Hello everyone. The Russian Federation is the largest country in the world, covering an area of over 17 million square kilometers, stretching from Europe to Asia. To achieve the vast territory they have today, the Russians waged countless bloody wars and brought together over 190 ethnic groups to coexist within a single nation. However, to this day, numerous separatist groups continue to fight for independence. If just one of them succeeds, vast Russia risks fragmenting into dozens of separate nations, much like the fate of the former Soviet Union. President Putin has implemented several strong measures to counter separatist forces. So which independence movements are currently the strongest in Russia? And what would happen if the Russian Federation were to truly collapse? Today's video invites you to explore this topic in just 5 minutes. Czechia, the most unstable land in Russia. The Caucasus Mountains are located in southern Russia, forming a natural boundary between Europe and Asia. Mount Elbrus, standing at 5,642 meters, is not only the highest peak in the Russian Federation but also the tallest point in all of Europe. With its rugged mountainous terrain, it was not until the early 18th century that the Russians began to conquer the North Caucasus region. One of the most arduous campaigns was the conquest of Chechnya and Dagestan. Since 1817, the Tsar's army encountered little resistance as it advanced into the eastern lowlands of Dagestan. Since these were lands already cleared for agricultural cultivation, the ruling class often found it easy to compromise, while the people were accustomed to obedience. However, holding onto the rugged mountainous terrain was truly no easy challenge. The Czechs of the Chin tribe were also brave warriors, with unwavering faith in Islam, which is why they caused significant difficulties for the Tsar's army. After 42 years of warfare, the Russian Empire finally conquered the regions of Chechnya and Dagestan in 1859. During this period, they also completed the annexation of the Ingud Setye region, originally the territory of the Ingud people, an ethnic group sharing common origins with the Chechnya nation. Although the Russian Empire had gained control of the Northeast Caucasus, the Muslim population there continued to revolt repeatedly, forcing the Tsar to seek another solution. By 1865, around 80% of the indigenous population had left their homeland. Due to the sharp decline in numbers, the Chechnya people were forced to resort to guerrilla warfare. This struggle continued well into the beginning of the 20th century. After the Soviet Union was established, the Bolsheviks divided the North Caucasus region into 6 political entities, including Dagestan, Chechnya, Ingushetia, and North Ossetia, Kabardino-Balkaria and Karachay-Cherkessia. However, by 1934, the Soviet government merged these 2 regions to establish the Chechnya-Ingushetia Autonomous Oblast. 2 years later, this place was upgraded to an autonomous republic. During World War II, the Czechs and the Ingush were deported to Central Asia on suspicion of collaborating with Nazi Germany and inciting separatist ideologies. Thus, the Autonomous Republic was also dissolved in 1944. It was not until 1957 that the Chechen-Ingush Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic was re-established. In 1991, when the Soviet Union was on the verge of collapse, Ingushetia once again expressed its desire to join the Russian Federation. The Czechs continued to fight for secession and the establishment of the Czechoslovakian Republic. By 1994, Russia launched a military campaign in the North Caucasus region, deploying up to 250,000 troops. However, the subsequent war in Chechnya turned into a disaster for the Russian army. When the Russian side suffered around 6,000 soldiers killed and 18,000 wounded, the Chechen side lost only about 3,000 troops. After 2 years of fighting, Russian forces were finally forced to withdraw from the area. In 1999, Chechnya attacked Dagestan to support separatist forces there, but this time the Russian army completely defeated the rebels. After leveling the capital city of Grozny, Chechnya officially became a republic within the Russian Federation. However, the pro-separatist faction continued to carry out a series of terrorist attacks, culminating in the horrific hostage crisis at a school in Beslan, located in North Ossetia. After many days of blockade, the Russian military was forced to deploy tanks in the attack, resulting in 300 casualties in the incident. About 2,000 Czech separatists also joined the fighting in Ukraine against the Russian Federation. They served in military units such as the Zohovka Duseyev Battalion or the Sekmonso Battalion. Conversely, the government of the Chechen Republic, under the leadership of Ramzan Kadyrov, has also deployed 26,000 troops to the conflict, including 12,000 volunteers. So a civil war among the Czechs is taking place on Ukrainian territory. Currently, the North Caucasus is one of the least developed regions in Russia, with the Chechen Republic ranking near the bottom. With a population of approximately 1.523 million and a 2022 GDP of 4.51 billion United States dollars, the per capita income that year was only 2,961 United States dollars. Despite its relatively modest area of just 16,165 square kilometers, the Czech Republic holds significant importance for vast Russia. If this region successfully breaks away, it will fuel independence movements in Ingushetia and Dagestan. Along with Chechnya, these are the three regions with the highest proportion of Muslims in Russia, all exceeding 80%. Thus, when these three republics merge into one, the total area will reach 69,558 square kilometers with an estimated population of about 5,235,000 people. In 2022, the GDP reached 18.74 billion United States dollars. This area will border Russia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, while also having a coastline along the Caspian Sea. Here are the translations, with the second option emphasizing convenience. The Circassian massacre during the Russian Empire era. The Sikhachia people are renowned for their beautiful appearance. They primarily inhabit the northwestern region of the Kafka Mountains, near the Black Sea. The Russian Empire began eyeing this region in the latter half of the 18th century. In 1763, the Tsar launched a war. The Russians display hostility toward the Circassians because they are Muslim, often calling them bandits or scoundrels. For a century, the Sikhachian people have steadfastly resisted Russian invasions. But by 1864, they were forced to surrender after Tsar Alexander II launched a brutal campaign of slaughter. At least 1 million people were killed in the massacres, along with another 500,000 who died while trying to flee. The consequence is that 95% of Sikhachia's population no longer lives on their homeland, with only a small minority willing to accept Russification. During the Soviet era, the Circassians were divided into four main ethnic groups, including the Odag, the Shopshugs, the Kabardians, and the Kabarda. The corresponding residential areas are the Republic of Adygea, Krasnodar Krai, the Karachay-Cherkess Republic, and the Kabardino-Balkar Republic. According to the 2021 population census, Russia has 112,765 Odag people, 1,914 Shopshugs, 114,697 Kabardians, and 523,404 Kabarda people. In 2021, there were a total of 752,780 Sikhachia people living in Russia, accounting for approximately 14% of the global Sikhachia population. Currently, outside the Kabardino-Balkar Republic, where Balkars make up 60.1% of the population, they are only a minority community in other regions. While the Russian government only allowed 50 Circassians abroad to immigrate under the quota, by August 9, 2009, the Republic of Adygea had announced a figure as high as 1,400, enabling more Circassians to return to their homeland. However, this action incited extremist elements, leading to a series of killings of Sikh immigrants. Additionally, relations between the two sides remain tense, largely because the Russian Federation has never acknowledged the genocide. Instead, they view it as an act of civilizing enlightenment, while claiming that the Circassians voluntarily left their homeland to migrate. The Russian people in the Kafka region still uphold the tradition of regarding May 21 each year as a sacred day of conquest. Meanwhile, for the global Sikhachia community, this is an occasion to commemorate those who have passed away. To date, only the Georgian government has officially recognized Russia's commission of genocide during the massacres of the 19th century. Currently, the Sikhachian people still aspire to establish an independent nation in the northwestern region of the Kafka Mountains, bordering the Black Sea. If including territories such as the Republic of Adige, the Krasnodar region, the Karachay-Cherkess Republic, and the Kabardino-Balkaria Republic, this new nation would have a total area of up to 110,024 square kilometers. With a GDP of $69.91 billion and a population of approximately 7,697,000, it would be a country with significant development potential. However, at that time, the Circassians accounted for less than 10% of the population, as the Krasnodar region, the largest and most populous area, had been deeply Russified. Therefore, the possibility of establishing a separate nation for the Circassians was nearly impossible. Kalmykia, the land under Mongol rule. Although located over 3,000 kilometers away from Mongolia, the Republic of Kalmykia is a land of nomadic people of Asian origin. Specifically, the Oirat people, also known as the Western Mongols, migrated from the steppes of southern Siberia along the Irtysh River down to the lower Volga River region in the early 16th century. Then, they established the Kalmyk Khanate in 1630 and reached the peak of their power under Ayuka Khan. However, by 1771, the Khanate was annexed by the Russian Empire during the reign of Empress Catherine the Great. By 1920, the Soviet Union established the autonomous Oblast of Kalmykia, and 15 years later, it was upgraded to an autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic within the USSR. However, during World War II, around 5,000 Karelians collaborated with Nazi Germany, while the number serving in the Soviet Red Army reached 23,540. Despite all opposition, Stalin ordered the deportation of 93,000 Kalmyks to Siberia in 1943. This forced migration resulted in the deaths of over 16,000 people, amounting to roughly 17% of the ethnic group's population. Shortly afterward, the Kalmyk Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic was also abolished. By 1956, after Stalin's death, the Kalmyk people were finally able to return to their homeland, and their former republic was restored. However, Astrakhan Oblast and the Stavropol region retained areas that had belonged to Kalmykia. Therefore, the president of the republic, Vasan Guro-Dovakov, resolutely fought and ultimately succeeded in reclaiming the Iki-Baruski district from the Stavropol region. But the Astrakhan region firmly refused to return the Limansky and Narimanovsky districts. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Kalmykia maintained its status as an autonomous republic within the newly formed Russian Federation. However, many locals still held hopes of reclaiming their former lands. Among these movements, the most prominent was the Oirat Kamyk People's Congress. Founded in 2015, this organization aims to achieve autonomy, establish the Kamyk language as an official language, and draft a new constitution for the republic. Additionally, they implement policies to address the economic, demographic, and political challenges faced by the Kamyk community. When the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, this organization voiced its opposition to the conflict. By October 27, 2022, they officially declared the establishment of the independent state of Kalmykia. However, by September 2023, the organization was banned by Russia from operating within its territory. Its economy has a GDP of $1.7 billion, equivalent to a per capita GDP of $6,411, which is only about half of Russia. Currently, there are still some people who want to merge the entire province of Asakhan into Kalmykia. If this happens, Kalmykia's area would increase to 123,755 square kilometers with a population of 1,219,000. At that point, the region would achieve a GDP of $12.64 billion and a per capita GDP of $10,369, significantly higher than the current level. The Tatar people and their dream of dominance over the Volga. The Tatars are the second largest ethnic minority in Russia, second only to the Russians. Most Tatars live concentrated along the Volga River basin, with the largest population residing in the Republic of Tatarstan. Previously, this area belonged to the Khanate of Kazan, but in 1552, it was conquered by the army of Tsar Ivan the Terrible. From this point onward, many Tatar people were forcibly converted to Orthodox Christianity and subjected to Russian cultural assimilation. It was not until 1766, during the reign of Empress Catherine the Great, that the ban on constructing new mosques was lifted, after all the old ones had been destroyed. When the Russian Empire collapsed, Tatar nationalists attempted to establish an independent state called Idel-Ural on March 1, 1918. However, this government lasted only 28 days before the senior leaders of the assembly were arrested by the Bolsheviks. By 1920, the Soviet Union established the Tatar Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, but less than half of the Volga Tatar population lived within its territory. Only a short time later, the Soviet Union was struck by a devastating famine, with the Volga region suffering the most severe losses. It is estimated that nearly half of Tatarstan's population perished in just 2 short years. Afterward, the region underwent a period of intense Russification, with many Islamic clerics exiled, while the Tatar language was removed from the curriculum and replaced with Russian. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, this region officially became the Republic of Tatarstan within the Russian Federation in 1992, led by a president. However, unlike other republics, Tatarstan proposed a separate agreement to safeguard its sovereignty. 2 years later, the two parties reached an agreement with Moskva on separate tax regulations, laws, and citizen privileges. Tatarstan retains control over its resources and budget, and can also participate in international affairs. However, this power-sharing agreement was only extended once in 2007 and officially expired by 2017. This makes Tatarstan the last republic in Russia to lose its special status. Currently, this is one of the most developed regions in Russia, thanks to its high level of industrialization and estimated oil reserves of over 7 billion barrels. In 2022, Tatarstan's GDP reached $59.79 billion United States dollars, ranking 7th in all of Russia. With a population of approximately 4 million, the per capita GDP here was $14,945 United States dollars. Although the area of 67,847 square kilometers is not small, many Tatar people still cherish the dream of an Ida-Ural nation stretching across the entire central Volga River basin. Specifically, this region comprises 6 republics of Russia, including Moldova, Chuvashia, Mari El, Tatarstan, Udmurtia, and Bashkortostan. This region has a total area of 320,701 square kilometers with a population of approximately 12,161,000 people. According to 2022 statistics, the region's GDP is estimated at $121.52 billion United States dollars. However, since the entire Ida-Ural region lies deep within Lemangna territory, it can only connect with other countries via the Volga River. Ships must travel downstream through Russian territory to reach the Caspian Sea. Siberia, a frigid land harboring abundant natural resources. While Russia's westward territorial expansion faced countless obstacles, the conquest of eastern lands proceeded far more smoothly. After destroying the Siberian Khanate in 1598, less than half a century later, Russian explorers had advanced close to the Pacific Ocean by the end of Mikhail I's reign, around 1645. For many years, fur was the most valuable resource in Siberia. By the mid-17th century, revenue from this animal accounted for over 10% of Russia's total budget. However, due to overexploitation, the population of fur-bearing animals across Siberia had severely declined by the early 18th century. By 1913, a ban on hunting and trading sable fur had been enacted to prevent the extinction of this species. Tasty pie. However, currently only the southern region, where the Trans-Siberian Railway passes, is receiving attention. The vast, desolate, and frigid lands of North Asia are mired in poverty. It also became the largest prison in the world, holding prisoners from the Russian Empire and Soviet eras. By 1953, the West Siberian oil and gas field was discovered, with hydrocarbon reserves reaching up to 144 billion barrels of oil and over 36.8 trillion cubic meters of natural gas. According to estimates, the untapped resources include approximately 55.2 billion barrels of oil, 18.2 trillion cubic meters of natural gas, and 20.5 billion barrels of liquefied natural gas. With its vast reserves, the West Siberia region contributes up to 70% of Russia's annual oil production. The Northern Asia region not only has a harsh climate but also boasts abundant mineral resources, encompassing nearly all types of precious metals. Some mines here have reserves among the largest in the world, such as nickel, gold, lead, molybdenum, diamonds, silver, and tin. Most of these resources are concentrated in remote, frigid regions with extremely harsh living and transportation conditions. Here, two opposing viewpoints emerged. Some people argue that although Siberia is rich in oil and gas resources, most of the profits flow directly to Moscow. Requiring mining companies to pay taxes in the local areas where they operate will help the people of Siberia benefit. Therefore, they aspire to build a self-reliant nation. However, many argue that Siberia relies on support from Western Russia to meet the demand for essential goods, including food and consumer products. Therefore, they oppose the idea of secession. But if Siberia becomes an independent nation, it will have autonomy in shaping its economic policies. From then on, the valuable resources of this frigid region could be used to trade goods with other countries, such as China or Japan. In reality, the idea of establishing an independent Siberia was once discussed in 1989 during the elections for the Congress of People's Deputies of the Soviet Union. However, the two sides reached an agreement in the Siberia Accord, under which local leaders would be granted additional authority. In 1992, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the autonomy of Siberia was reconsidered. However, the territorial boundaries within the region remained unchanged under the agreement signed in 1989. In this statement, they declared that if the demands of the local people were not met, they would accelerate the process of establishing a Siberian Republican government. By 2014, after Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula, performance artist Artyom Loskotov attempted to organize a protest to promote the idea of establishing a Siberian Republic within the Russian Federation. This idea was supported by Alexei Navalny, an opposition politician. While the Kremlin imposed censorship on information about the protest, Russia's media watchdog Roskomnadzor warned 14 publishers and threatened to suspend the operations of BBC News Russian. Here are the natural English translations for your Vietnamese text. At that time, the country will have an area of up to 13,132,900 square kilometers, becoming the largest country in the world. Meanwhile, the remaining territory of Russia will only be 3,972,400 square kilometers, dropping to 6th place globally. Despite its vast area, Siberia is sparsely populated, with a population of approximately 37,070,000 people, equating to a density of only 2.8 people per square kilometer. GDP in 2022 reached $598 billion, accounting for 29.7% of Russia. If Russia loses